The first thing Ethan Caldwell did every morning in Aspen was check the sky, not the weather app, not the alerts on his phone. He walked to the east-facing window of the cabin he rented under a false name every winter, pressed 2 fingers to the cold glass, and looked up. He had learned, after years of living at altitude, that the sky told the truth before anything else did. If the clouds sat low and gray-bottomed over the Elk Mountains, snow was coming. If they stacked in great white columns, it would hold off until evening. If the sky was completely clear, that sharp, merciless blue that only exists above 10,000 feet, then the cold would be the kind that made your teeth ache and your exhaled breath hang in the air like a small ghost. That morning, the second Friday in January, the sky was the kind of blue that warned you. He had been in Aspen for 3 days. He told his assistant, Margaret, that he needed a quiet week before the board presentation. He told his daughter Lily's school that she would be finishing the week remotely. He told no one else anything, because explaining yourself was a habit he had mostly broken. Lily was still asleep. She was 7, and she slept the way children sleep in cold places, deeply, curled tight into herself. The comforter pulled to the bridge of her nose. He watched her for a moment from the doorway. She had her mother's straight, dark brows and his tendency to frown even while dreaming, as if she were working through a problem the waking world had not yet shown her. He went to the kitchen and made coffee without turning on any lights. He did not need them. He had spent enough mornings in this cabin to know where everything was by feel. The invitation had arrived 11 days ago, forwarded from his main office address to his personal email with a note from Margaret that said only, "Thought you should see this before I file it." His ex-wife, Sophia Monroe, was getting married. The wedding was in Aspen. The date was this Saturday. The venue was a stone chapel set among snow-covered pines that he happened to know she had admired during the one ski trip they had taken together 4 years ago, before everything fell apart. He had not responded. He had not declined. He had simply driven west with Lily and their overnight bags and told himself he needed the altitude. The truth, which he did not particularly want to examine, was that receiving the invitation had made him feel something he could not name. Not grief, not jealousy, something quieter and more embarrassing, the particular loneliness of being the person in the story who was left behind. Even when you were the one who understood, eventually, why it happened. Sophia had left him 2 years ago. Not because he had done something wrong, but because of what she believed about him, that he was a man without ambition, without drive, content to coast. She had said it plainly, without cruelty. "I don't want to spend my life watching you be comfortable, Ethan. I want someone who wants things." She had not known then, and did not know now, that the company she used on her phone, the scheduling and logistics platform called Caldwell Dynamics, was his, that the anonymous holding group she had read about in a business magazine the previous spring was his, that the reason he lived simply was because he had spent 21 months watching a version of himself that had wanted things obsessively and had decided that he did not like that person very much. He had not told her because, by the time he could have, there was nothing left to save, and he had not told anyone since because it was easier, and because there was something he found clarifying about being underestimated. His phone buzzed. Lily had sent him a voice note from 20 feet away because she refused to shout across the cabin. "Dad, I can smell the coffee. Is there hot chocolate?" He smiled for the first time that morning and turned on the lights. The storm rolled in by late afternoon. Lily had wanted to see the town, so they walked the main street under a sky that was already beginning to drop its first fine needles of snow. She held his hand and stopped at every shop window, not to go inside but to look at the arranged scarves, at the wooden toys, at the racks of things no one actually needed. She was not a demanding child, she observed. He had always found this remarkable. They ate dinner early at a place with red vinyl booths and pie that Lily declared was acceptable, but not life-changing. She was 7 and had opinions. He had no idea where she got them. The snow was serious by the time they stepped outside. It came sideways in gusts, not the gentle postcard variety, and the streets had already taken on that compressed, muffled quality that heavy snowfall gives to everything. He buckled Lily into the back of the truck and started back toward the cabin. He saw her 2 blocks before the highway turnoff. She was sitting on the bench at the old Route 82 transfer stop, a shelter that the transit company had unofficially decommissioned the previous October when they rerouted the evening service. She was wearing a canvas jacket that was not warm enough for what the weather was doing. A wool cap pulled low, and she was sitting perfectly still. Her hands pressed between her knees, not hunched over but upright, with the kind of stillness that is not resignation but something older. He pulled over. He did not think about it in the way people think about decisions. He pulled over because the alternative, driving past a woman sitting in the open in this weather, was not something he was constitutionally capable of. He rolled down the passenger window. "The 82 doesn't stop here anymore." She looked at him. Her eyes were pale gray, and they assessed him without alarm, which he noted. "I know," she said. "I missed the last one." "Where are you trying to get to?" "Somewhere warm," she said. And there was something in the way she said it that was neither funny nor sad, just accurate. "Dad?" Lily said from the back seat, very quietly. He looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror. She met his eyes and said nothing else, which was also an opinion. "We're going back toward Castle Creek," he said. "There's a diner still open on the way. I can take you there, at least." The woman looked at him for a moment, weighing something he couldn't read, and then she stood up, pulling her bag onto her shoulder, and got into the truck. Her name was Clara Hayes. She told him this after several blocks of silence, as if she had needed the time to decide whether the information was something she wanted to give. She was 34. She had been in Aspen for 10 days, she said, and it had not gone the way she planned. He did not ask what she meant by that. He had learned that the specific shape of a person's misfortune was theirs to share or not share, and that asking directly was usually the less kind thing. In the back seat, Lily had pulled off her own scarf without being asked and was holding it over the center console toward Clara. Clara looked at the scarf, then at Lily, then at Ethan. "She runs warm," he said, which was not entirely true. Clara took the scarf. "Thank you," she said to Lily, not in the soft, performed way adults thank children for small things, but directly, as if she meant it. They did not go to the diner. They went back to the cabin. Because the diner was closed, he could see the lights were out as they passed, and because the storm was now genuine and the road to town was becoming difficult. He made pasta and poured 2 glasses of wine and put out orange juice for Lily, and they ate at the kitchen table while the wind pressed against the windows. Clara ate without performance. She did not thank him excessively or fill the silence with the kind of nervous talk that people use to prove they deserve the kindness they've been shown. She asked Lily what she was reading. Lily told her about the book, a story about a girl who trained horses in Montana, and they discussed it seriously, as if they were 2 people of equal standing, who simply happened to hold different amounts of information about horses. After dinner, when Lily had gone to brush her teeth, Clara looked at the far wall of the cabin for a moment and said, "I need to tell you something." "You don't," he said. "I want to." She looked at him. "I was a musician, concert pianist. I had recordings, a label, touring contracts. 3 years ago, my brother got into serious trouble, debt, legal problems, and I used everything I had to help him. Everything. And it wasn't enough to save him, and it was enough to lose me." She paused. "I'm telling you because you've been kind, and I don't want to take advantage of it under false pretenses." He thought about that. "Are you taking advantage of it?" "I ate your food," she said. "I invited you." She nodded, accepting this. "I have a strange request," he said, "and you're completely free to say no." He explained it simply. His ex-wife was getting married tomorrow. He had not planned to go, but he had the invitation and, more relevantly, he had his daughter, who had asked that morning why they were in Aspen the same weekend as Sophia's wedding, a phrase Lily deployed with the neutral precision of a 7-year-old who has assessed the situation and chosen not to comment further. He did not want to go alone. He did not want to go with the specific purpose of appearing to have moved on. He wanted to go with someone who was actually there, present, themselves, unconcerned with the theater of it. "You'd be doing me a favor," he said, "and I would be doing you one. You need a place to stay tonight. The roads are closed until morning anyway." Clara was quiet for a moment. "What kind of wedding is this?" "The expensive kind. I don't have anything to wear to an expensive wedding. We'll handle that in the morning." She looked at him with that same gray steadiness. "You're very calm about all of this." "I've had a lot of practice being calm," he said. In the morning, the roads were open. The sky was clear, and Lily announced at breakfast that she wanted to help Clara pick out a dress. Clara accepted this proposal without condescension or enthusiasm, simply as a practical matter that required collaboration. He took them to a small boutique on Durant Avenue run by a woman named Patricia Voss, who had been dressing people for Aspen events for 20 years, and who asked no questions beyond the relevant ones. Occasion, time of day, general color preferences. Ethan stayed near the door and let them work. He watched Clara in the boutique. She moved through the racks without the acquisitive urgency that the store usually produced in its customers. She touched fabrics the way you touch something you are evaluating rather than coveting. When Lily held up a cream-colored wool dress with a simple cut and no ornamentation, Clara held it up against herself, looked in the narrow mirror near the window, and said, "Yes, that one." She did not look transformed when she came out of the fitting room. She looked like herself in a dress that fit her correctly. He was not sure why this distinction seemed important to notice, but it did. Patricia rang them up without ceremony. Ethan paid. Clara did not object, which told him she understood the transaction clearly and was neither embarrassed by it nor inflating it into something it wasn't. In the truck on the way back, Lily said, from the back seat, "You look like someone who used to be famous." Clara turned around and looked at her. "What does that look like?" Lily considered it seriously. "Like you know things you're not saying." Ethan kept his eyes on the road. The chapel sat at the end of a narrow road lined with snow-weighted pines, and in the late afternoon light it looked exactly like something out of a winter ceremony. Stone walls, arched windows, candles already burning inside. The parking area had been cleared and attendants in dark coats directed cars with practiced efficiency. Ethan had been to enough events in enough contexts to know how people calibrate their assessments on arrival. The car you drove, who you came with, how you walked in. He drove a truck. He came with a woman no one here knew, and a 7-year-old in a velvet dress who was already looking at the pine trees with scientific interest. He walked slowly. Sophia's circle investment bankers, hedge fund managers, the particular subspecies of New York money that wintered in Colorado, stood near the entrance, drinks already in hand. Several of them looked up when Ethan came through the outer doors with Clara and Lily. He recognized the expression, the recalibration, the specific confusion of encountering someone they had previously filed under not relevant in a context that required them to update that file. A man named Derek Forsyth, who had been at Merrill Lynch with Sophia's new husband, stepped slightly forward. He was the kind of man who established pecking orders within 30 seconds of entering a room. "Ethan, I didn't know you were coming." "I was invited," Ethan said. Derek looked at Clara. "And this is?" "Clara Hayes," she said. She did not offer additional information. She also did not look at Derek the way people look at someone they perceive as powerful. She looked at him the way she had looked at the bus shelter bench, as a feature of the landscape that required noting but not particularly dwelling on. Derek smiled the smile of a man who had decided to be patient. "Interesting. What do you do, Clara?" "I'm between things," she said pleasantly. He waited for elaboration. She did not provide any. Lily tugged Ethan's hand. "Can we sit near the candles?" "Sure," he said. And they walked inside. Sophia saw them from across the vestibule. He knew the exact moment because he felt it not with any surviving emotional complexity, but simply as a fact of the room. She was in ivory, her dark hair pinned at the nape of her neck. And she was beautiful in the way she had always been beautiful. Intentionally, completely. She looked at him, then at Clara, then back at him. Something moved through her expression that he could not fully read and did not spend time trying to. Her new husband, a man named Grant Whitmore who ran a fund out of Greenwich, was beside her. He was tall, silver-templed, accustomed to being the person in the room that other people measured themselves against. He looked at Ethan with the pleasant, unbothered certainty of a man who had already won. Ethan shook his hand. They exchanged the phrases that serve as conversation at these events. He did not try to establish anything. Clara stood slightly beside him and slightly apart, which was its own form of composure. The reception was held in the chapel's connected hall, a long, warm room with exposed timber beams and a temporary floor laid over stone for dancing. A four-piece ensemble had been set up in the far corner. Violin, cello, guitar, piano. By 8 o'clock, the ensemble had been playing for an hour. At 8:15, the pianist, a young man named Russell, who had driven up from Denver, stood up from the bench with an expression of careful distress and had a quiet, urgent conversation with the wedding coordinator, a woman named Beverly Marsh, who ran events in the Roaring Fork Valley, with the focused energy of someone managing a military operation. The piano was out of tune. Not badly, but enough. The dry mountain air had done something to the strings during transport. Russell, to his credit, was honest about it. He could not play the Chopin nocturne that had been requested for the first dance. The pitch was wrong on the upper register, and he did not have the tools to correct it. Beverly handled the next 12 minutes the way she handled all problems, by solving the easiest part first and buying time for the rest. She switched the playlist to recorded music for the first dance, spoke quietly to the ensemble about the backup plan, and then did a visual sweep of the room for anyone who might play. She stopped at Clara. Ethan did not hear the conversation. He was at the bar with Lily, who had been permitted a second ginger ale and was examining the ice sculptures with professional seriousness. He saw Beverly approach Clara, saw the brief exchange. He saw Clara shake her head. He saw Beverly say something else. He saw Clara look at the piano. The look lasted maybe 3 seconds. She walked to the bench. The room did not quiet immediately. Rooms rarely do. The awareness moved in from the edges, as people noticed the young woman in the cream dress sitting down at the piano instead of Russell, and leaned toward the person beside them, and the conversation dropped in stages until, by the time Clara placed her hands on the keys, most of the room was watching. She played the Chopin. Not despite the tuning, but with it adjusting within the first 4 bars to the instrument's particular pitch, meeting it where it was, making the slight flatness of the upper register into something that sounded like intention. The nocturne filled the room the way warmth fills a room, not all at once, but completely, until you could not remember what the temperature had been before. Ethan stood very still. He had not known. She had told him she was a pianist, had explained her career in the past tense, practically, but there is a distance between knowing a fact and standing in a room while the fact reveals itself. This was different. This was what it actually was. Lily had found her way to him during the first minute of the piece. She did not say anything. She put her hand in his and they stood together and listened. When Clara finished, the silence lasted longer than silence usually does in a crowded room. Then the applause started. Sophia was standing very still near the center of the room. Ethan did not look at her. He was looking at Clara, who sat for a moment with her hands still on the keys, and then took a breath and stood. Grant Whitmore had made the phone call between the ceremony and the reception. He had a particular skill, one he was not always proud of, but had found consistently useful, of knowing which details to look up and when. He had Googled Ethan during the receiving line, then had his associate run a more thorough search during cocktail hour. He came to find Ethan near the coat room, around 9 o'clock, with 2 glasses of whiskey and the relaxed directness of a man who had decided to have an honest conversation. "Caldwell Dynamics," Grant said, handing him one of the glasses. Ethan accepted it. "Good whiskey." "It is. You don't advertise." "No." Grant looked at him with what seemed like genuine interest, the kind unclouded by the competitive anxiety that usually undercut such exchanges. "Why?" Ethan considered the question. "I spent a long time caring very much whether people knew what I had accomplished. It was exhausting, and it made me someone I didn't want to be." Grant nodded slowly. "Sophia doesn't know." "No." "Will you tell her?" "No," Ethan said. "There's no version of that conversation that helps anyone." Grant was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I think I understand why she left you, and I think she made a mistake." He said it without apparent satisfaction, simply as an observation. "That's probably a strange thing to say. I'm going to go find my wife." He left. Ethan stood with the whiskey. Outside, through the long windows, the snow had resumed. He could see it in the light that spilled from the hall, enormous, deliberate flakes dropping straight down in the windless air. He went out through the side door. Clara was already there. She was standing on the narrow terrace without her coat, which he suspected was not something she had thought about before coming outside. He took off his jacket and held it out without comment. She looked at it. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're cold." She took the jacket. "How did you know?" "About the way I was playing, I mean." "You didn't look surprised." "I was surprised," he said. "There's a difference between being surprised and showing it. You're like that about everything. Mostly." She looked out at the snow. "Your company, the one they were talking about inside." "I heard. You're not upset. It was going to come out eventually. It always does." She turned to look at him. "Why didn't you tell her, Sophia, when you had the chance?" He thought about it for a moment. "Because who I am shouldn't depend on what I can prove. If she needed proof, then the proof would never be enough." He paused, "And because I wanted to know if anyone would stay without it." Clara was quiet. The snow fell between them. "Is that why you brought me?" she asked. Not with suspicion, more with the careful precision of someone making sure they understand the terms. "No," he said. "I brought you because you were sitting in the cold at a bus stop and you were honest about it, and those 2 things seemed like reasons enough." Sophia found him at 10:30 in the brief window when Clara had taken Lily to find the bathroom, and the room had temporarily reoriented around the cake cutting. She was still in her wedding dress. The ceremony felt very far away. She looked at him with an expression he had not seen on her face before. Uncertain, unresolved, not unhappy exactly, but aware of something. "Why did you come?" she asked. "You invited me. That's not an answer." He thought about it. "I came because Lily asked why we were in Aspen the same weekend, and I didn't have a good reason to avoid it." Sophia looked at him for a moment. "She's wonderful, Ethan. Lily. She's so present." "She is." "Is Clara?" Sophia paused. "How long have you two?" "We met last night." She blinked. "Last night?" "Yes. You brought a woman you met last night to my wedding. She needed somewhere to be," he said, "and I thought it would be good for Lily to see that I was capable of talking to adults." Sophia smiled at that, a real smile, brief and involuntary. Then it faded. "I heard about Caldwell Dynamics," Grant told me. He said nothing. "Ethan." Her voice shifted, quieter. "I didn't let you believe anything," he said gently. "You made a decision based on what you saw. I understood that decision. I still do, but I was wrong. You were right about some things," he said. "I was coasting, in the early years. I was afraid of what full commitment looked like, and I disguised it as contentment. You weren't wrong to want more." She looked at him with something that was not quite longing, more like the particular grief of understanding something too late to do anything useful with it. "I hope you're happy," he said, and he meant it. "I think I will be," she said, slowly. "Grant is he's good. He's different from what I expected. That's the best thing you can say about someone." She nodded. She took a breath. "She played beautifully," Sophia said. Clara. "Yes. Take care of yourself, Ethan." "You too." She went back inside. He stood for a moment in the quiet hallway. He felt nothing that needed managing. That seemed, in itself, like a kind of progress. The second storm arrived around 11. This one was different, not the steady, picturesque snowfall of the evening, but something with real intent. Dropping visibility to 50 yards and turning the parking area into a surface that the attendants, after one consultation with the road authority, declared impassable until morning. Beverly Marsh appeared at the center of the room and delivered the news in the calm, competent manner that had made her the preferred coordinator for every significant event in the valley for 15 years. Guest rooms were available in the adjacent lodge. The chapel hall would remain open. The bar would remain staffed. What followed was the particular social chemistry of 200 people unexpectedly required to spend the night in the same place. Some people processed this as an extension of the celebration. Some processed it as a logistical problem to be solved. A few elderly guests became anxious about medication and morning commitments. Ethan moved through the room quietly for the next 40 minutes, doing things that required doing. He helped an older couple, the Hartleys, friends of Sophia's parents, settle into chairs near the fire and connected them with Beverly about their medication situation. He helped locate the lodge's facilities manager and ensure the rooms were being properly assigned. He found the catering staff in a minor crisis about breakfast coverage and helped them think through the math of what they had on hand. He did this without identifying himself, without announcing his involvement, without doing anything that would require anyone to update their assessment of him. He simply did what was useful. Clara was in the far corner of the room when he found her. She had gathered the 4 children present at the event, ages ranging from 5 to 9, and had arranged them in a loose semicircle. She was teaching them a hand game, something rhythmic and complicated, and they were playing it with the total, competitive focus that children bring to physical coordination challenges. He stood at the edge of the circle and watched. Lily was in the center of the group, demonstrating a variation she had apparently invented. Clara was watching her with the focused attention she gave to everything not performing interest, but genuinely interested. When Clara looked up and saw him, she raised her eyebrows in a question. "Everything's handled," he said quietly. She nodded. She returned to the hand game. He stood there for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. He was watching the way she sat with the children, the specific quality of her attention, which was not the performed warmth that adults often deploy with children they don't know well, but something actual. She was paying attention because she was interested, and children could tell the difference, which was why Lily had accepted her so easily from the beginning. Grant came to stand beside him. "She's good with them," Grant said. "Yes, she's good with a lot of things, I suspect." Ethan did not answer this, which was also an answer. "Thank you," Grant said, "for what you did earlier. With the Hartleys and the rest of it, it needed doing." "Most things need doing," Grant said. "The question is who notices." At 1 in the morning, when the room had quieted to the low conversation of people too warm and tired to pretend otherwise, Clara found Ethan near the side door. "I'm going to stay here tonight and find my way back to the city tomorrow," she said. "Beverly said there's a room available." "I know. He had arranged it." She looked at him. "Thank you for tonight." "Genuinely. I know it was a strange arrangement." "It wasn't strange," he said. "It was honest." She almost smiled. "That's generous, Clara." She looked at him. "I'd like to see you again. When we're back in Denver, or wherever you're going." She was quiet for a moment. "You should know," she said carefully, "that I don't have anything right now. I don't have a place, a plan, a clean version of my life to present to someone. I don't want to be someone's project." "I know you're not a project," he said. "You were the most capable person in this room tonight and the only one who didn't know it." She looked away. Outside, through the window, The snow had softened smaller flakes now. Slower, the storm exhaling. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you gave Lily your scarf," he said. "And then you didn't make it into anything. You just sat there and ate pasta." She made a sound that was almost a laugh. "And because you play like that," he added, "and you were sitting in the cold at a bus stop, and you told me the truth about your life before I asked for it." He paused. "Those are not small things." She turned back to him. Her face, in the candlelight that was still burning from the ceremony, was the face of someone in the process of deciding something important. "I'm not easy," she said. "I have a lot of unfinished things. I have a 7-year-old who argues about pi ratings," he said. "I'm comfortable with complexity." The almost laugh became an actual one, brief and genuine. Lily appeared in the doorway behind them, in her velvet dress and her velvet opinions. She looked between them. "Are you done?" she asked. "Almost," Ethan said. "Take your time," Lily said, with enormous patience, and disappeared back into the warm room. Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Coffee. In Denver." "That's all I'm promising right now." "That's more than enough," he said. January again. The same stone chapel. The same narrow road through the pines. The snow was falling the way it falls when it means to stay steady, unhurried, with the quality of something that has decided. There were 14 people inside. Ethan's older sister, Rebecca, who had flown in from Portland and spent the morning alternating between crying quietly and threatening to start crying again. Margaret, his assistant, who had worn a hat that she kept adjusting and who had told him, when he called to invite her, that she had known something like this was going to happen the day she forwarded the Monroe wedding invitation. 2 colleagues, Clara's friend Diane, who had driven from Boulder and who had introduced herself to Lily within 30 seconds of arrival and been immediately assessed and approved. A few others, people who had earned the designation of presence at something small and real. No industry contacts, no one who needed managing, no one performing attendance. Patricia Voss from the boutique was there, because Lily had insisted, and because Clara had agreed that this was a reasonable insistence. Clara had chosen her own dress. It was deep green, the color of pine trees in winter. She had not asked anyone's opinion, which Ethan had found, when she showed him a photograph the week before, to be among the many things about her that he found consistently clarifying. Lily stood beside him at the front of the chapel in the dress she had also chosen herself, burgundy wool, practical shoes, her hair loose. She was holding a small bundle of white flowers, which she had been practicing holding correctly all morning in front of the bathroom mirror with the focused solemnity she brought to things that mattered to her. When the music started, Clara had chosen a Bach prelude, played by a pianist from Denver named Simone, who she had known from the circuit and who played it exactly right. Lily reached up and took Ethan's hand. "Dad," she said quietly. "Yeah, I think this is the life-changing kind." He looked down at her. "The what?" "Like the pie." She looked up at him with her serious dark brows. "The life-changing kind." He felt something move through him that he did not try to name. He pressed her hand. Clara came through the door. She walked the way she did, everything without performance, at her own pace, looking at him with that gray steadiness that he had first noticed at the bus stop in the dark and the cold when she had assessed him and decided, with whatever calculus she used, that he was worth the risk of getting in the truck. He had not hidden anything from her. He had told her about the company 3 weeks after Denver Coffee, not dramatically, not as a confession, but because it was true, and she was someone who dealt in accurate information. She had been quiet for a moment. Then she had said, "That explains Margaret," and they had moved on. He had watched her rebuild. Not quickly and not without difficulty. She had started teaching piano 3 afternoons a week at a studio in Capitol Hill, and the studio had asked her within 2 months to expand her hours, and she had taken a recording project in the spring for a composer she admired, and she was deciding, slowly, what her career looked like now that she was building it without a crisis at its center. He had not funded any of this. She had not asked him to. He had driven her to sessions when the timing worked and ordered food when she came home late. And these were the textures of a life being built together, not the dramatic gestures that people confuse for love. Lily had given her full endorsement 9 months ago, in the form of a detailed and unprompted critique of a piece Clara had been practicing. That part in the middle is the best part, but you keep rushing it, and I think you know you're rushing it, which Clara had received with complete seriousness and acted on. Now Clara reached him at the front of the chapel. Outside, the snow continued its quiet, committed work. He looked at her. She looked at him. There was nothing to establish, nothing to prove, no version of themselves they were performing for the room. There were just the 14 people who had been worth inviting, and the prelude coming to its resolution, and his daughter standing beside him holding flowers she'd practiced holding, and the woman who had been sitting in the cold the night he happened to drive by. The minister, a calm man named Reverend David Lowell, who had asked them 2 questions in their pre-ceremony meeting and spent the rest of the time listening, opened his book. "We're here," he said, "because of a snowstorm." This got a quiet laugh from the 14 people. "Which is to say," Reverend Lowell continued, "we're here because of something no one planned that turned out to be exactly what was needed." Ethan looked at Clara. She was almost smiling. He thought about the things you cannot plan: a decommissioned bus stop, a storm with intent, a scarf given without ceremony, pasta eaten in honest silence, a piano played to its actual condition rather than the condition you wished it were in. He thought about the long discipline of not announcing yourself and the strange freedom of being known anyway. He thought about Lily, who had looked at a stranger in the truck and extended a scarf and been correct. The snow fell outside. The candles held. Ethan Caldwell, who had spent several years carefully keeping himself separate from the things that could hurt him, looked at the woman who had walked through a storm to get here and said the words that meant he was done being careful. Some people lose everything in winter. Some of them find it was the only way to discover what had been waiting in the cold all along.